Gather around, my friends, because today we are going to solve a mystery that has puzzled mankind for perhaps thousands of years, a conundrum that has absolutely mystified mankind since the beginning of time, or at least for a few years. We're going to talk about various Middle Eastern clone houses and decide once for all, finally, what is the very best Middle Eastern clone house, or at least I'm going to give you my opinions. So if that sounds interesting, I hope you'll stick around and give a like to the video. Remember to sub to the channel if you haven't done that. I got videos coming out every couple days, and I hope you'll join us. And let me know down in the comments, what is your pick? What's the best clone houses and ones that are producing a lot of fragrances nowadays? What is your choice for the very best? So what we're going to do is we'll talk about a house. We'll talk about several fragrances from them. I have originals for each of these as well as a clone. I'll talk about the differences. And then in the end, obviously, it's just going to be my opinion, but I'll share my thoughts on sort of how the different houses stack up against each other. So let's go ahead and dive in. First of all, we're going to talk about the House of Armaf, and this is one, obviously, any of these could have their whole video, and as a matter of fact, on my channel, I do have entire videos devoted to each of these houses. And the House of Armaf, we're going to start off by talking about a clone of a specific fragrance, then I'm going to talk about a number of other fragrances. Dior Sauvage, I still think is a great aromatic fougere. If you want something fresh, a little spicy, very aromatic, wear it any day, anytime. I think Dior Sauvage is still a great choice. And I think if most people are honest, you got to say, man, there's a reason it's so mass-pleasing. I think it smells fantastic. There's at least two clones. Now there could be a lot more, but two main clones, well-known clones by Armaf of Dior Sauvage. One of them is this right here, the Pride of Armaf. The other one, which I don't have, is called Ventana. From what I understand, Ventana is closer to Sauvage EDT in the opening, and Pride of Armaf is kind of closer in the dry down. Pride of Armaf is probably a little closer to, it's in between Sauvage EDT and EDP. But both of them are pretty good clones. From what I understand, Ventana is not quite as close all the way through, and there are some elements of that one that some people don't like, a little too harsh or abrasive. But I would even say the Pride of Armaf is a touch smoother than Sauvage EDT. I happen to like the extreme nature of Sauvage EDT, but altogether, the Pride of Armaf is a really good clone of Sauvage, and I think one that is worth picking up. And Armaf has done a really good job of taking a fragrance such as Sauvage and cloning it in a way that's never going to be one-to-one. Not a single clone in this video is going to be one-to-one, but Armaf does a pretty good job of capturing the essence of a fragrance, packaging it, and selling it at a reasonable price that is, appealing to a large number of people. One of the things that Armaf did really well is back a few years ago, they started to release clones of fragrances by Creed. And one of their, biggest ones, of course, was a clone of Creed Aventus, Club de Nuit Intense Man. Now, I don't have Club de Nuit Intense Man. I bought it years ago, and I didn't really like it. I couldn't stand that lemon, that sort of abrasive lemon in the opening. I felt like it just went too far away from Aventus. I loved Aventus when it came out. I got some cartage samples that I was smitten from that point forward. But that being said, they've gone on now to do different versions of Club de Nuit Intense Man, a Parfum, a special edition, a EDP, and those are supposed to be much better. But I will tell you, out of those that I mentioned, the clones of Aventus, as well as Club de Nuit Milestone, which is a clone of Millesime Imperial, Club de Nuit Sillage, which is a clone of Silver Mountain Water, and even Très Nuit, which is a clone of Green Irish Tweed. Those clones of Creed fragrances, I think, put Armaf in a whole nother level as far as awesome clones at great prices that nail a fragrance profile and in some cases even improve on them. Millesime Imperial clone and Silver Mountain Water clones I just mentioned, the Milestone and Sillage, both of those perform better than the ones that they are cloning. And Tres Nuit is an excellent clone of Green Irish Tweed. And so Armaf has been around for a while. It's been known, I think, from my knowledge, it's been more well known for the last 4 or 5 years than these other houses that we're going to talk about. And for that reason, I think Armaf does hold a little bit of an advantage just in name recognition, although they better do something to keep up if they're going to hang in there, because clones have exploded this last year or two. So first, the House of Armaf. Next one we're going to talk about is the House of Lattafa, and Lattafa also has a sub-house called Maison Alhambra. I'm going to kind of smush those together here. I've got a ton of clones from Lattafa, a ton from Maison Alhambra, but I'm just going to talk about 2 today. One of them is a clone of this fragrance right here, my favorite blue fragrance. I've got a wide range of fragrances here, not just blue fragrances. It just happens the first 2 I mentioned are blue fragrances, but I freaking love this fragrance right here. YEDP by Yves Saint Laurent. Beautiful, aromatic, sweet, blue fragrance. It's gorgeous, Love the sweet fruity opening, the sage and juniper combo in the heart. I love everything about it, the ambroxan, all of it. Now they've done several clones, and I have several clones of Y. The first one that kind of came out and got hyped that I'm aware of anyway is this one right here, Fakhar Black. And whenever this one came out, there's probably 20 clones of YEDP now, but there wasn't even a year and a half ago. It was much more scant. And so I picked this one up. There's immediately differences that you will notice, but it is a really good clone. It performs very well, and it's very inexpensive, usually in the low 20s. And so for what you get, this Lattafa clone right here, Fakhar Black, is excellent. $22, $23, and you're going to get probably 85% close to the original. This one it's not as smooth, it's not as thick and rich as the original is. There's just a different kind of freshness, a different kind of aromatic vibe, but it's still a killer clone. The main thing I'll say about Lattafa Maison Alhambra is their prices are amazing. The way they price fragrances, even when they first come out, is absolutely remarkable, and I think that's really where their strong suit is their pricing. So next one I'll mention is a clone of this. Again, another one of my favorite fragrances of all time. I'm talking about Jean-Paul Gaultier Le Male Les Parfums, and this is basically a spicy vanilla iris fragrance. It is such a gorgeous vanilla cardamom fragrance with a discernible iris note. That lipsticky iris, I think, makes the fragrance. It would have been a great fragrance without that, but I think it's in masterpiece territory with that. I love iris. I love sweet, spicy fragrances. This one is absolute gold as far as I'm concerned. And Maison Alhambra has this $22 clone, even on Amazon, that you can get of that one. And it's been a little while since I've smelled it. And I would say, again, they did probably like an 85% similar job with Glacier Le Noir. And for the price, it is insane. And I say for the price because if I would have paid $50 for this, I wouldn't be as happy with it. But for $22, it's so good. And if you have Glacier Le Noir, I don't even think you need to pick up Le Male Les Parfums. Although I will say the original is richer. It smells higher quality. It's not as synthetic, but this is still a great pickup for $22. So Lattafa Maison Alhambra, whereas Armaf has kind of got that OG status, and they are probably a little more premium as a whole than a lot of the Maison Alhambra Lattafa fragrances. Lattafa's strength is their pricing for sure. Next house that we'll mention is Paris Corner. Now they have been gaining clout more and more over the past year or so. There are some fragrances they released back even 3-4 years ago, some of which were not great and some of which got, poor reviews online. And so I'm going to mention a couple of them. I got a bunch of Paris Corner fragrances, but I'm just going to mention 2. Let's see here. I'll mention this one first because I have a more positive impression of this one. They have done a whole line of fragrances cloning Mancera fragrances. They've got red tobacco clone. They've got a Roses Vanille clone. They've got Cedrat Boisé clone. They've got a whole bunch of them. I'll think of Instant Crush. They've got this whole line. And for the most part, these have been stellar. They're in the, usually you can get them in the low $30 range. And so the first one I'm going to mention is a clone of Cedrat Boisé. This is Intense Cedrat Boisé. I don't have the original Cedrat Boisé anymore. So I've got the Intense, pretty similar to the original. It's just got a touch of oud and a little more leather. It's a great, all year round fragrance, somewhat similar to Creed Aventus, but also got a lot of differences as well. And their clone, Paris Corner Emir line, that's where the Mancera clones are, is the Emir line. Their clone, Cedrat Essence, is a killer. It is so very good. It is definitely a clone of Cedrat Boisé, not Intense Cedrat Boisé, and they just did an excellent job. This actually performs a little better on me than Mancera Cedrat Boisé. And so this is a good, this fragrance profile in general doesn't last 12 hours on me like it does on some people. It lasts 7 or 8 hours, and this fragrance right here lasts 7 or 8 hours, and it is super close to the Mancera Cedrat Boisé. Highly recommend that one. The next Paris Corner clone that I'll mention, this is a clone of Wanted by Night, Azzaro Wanted by Night. One of my favorite fragrances of all time. I keep saying that, but it's just the truth. That's the kind of fragrances I picked for this video. It's a honey, tobacco, cinnamon, absolutely gorgeous, very sexy, sweet, spicy fragrance, and I love this stuff. It's a great mix. It's in a family of something like Xerjoff Naxos, although there are significant differences, but it's that kind of sort of light, sweet, fruity tobacco fragrance, pipe tobacco fragrance. So absolutely love this stuff, and I was very excited when I saw that Paris Corner had cloned it, and so I went ahead and picked up this one, Wayfarer Homme, a clone of Wanted by Night. The packaging looks exactly the same. It's undoubtedly a clone of Wanted by Night, but it does not smell like Wanted by Night. This is the biggest miss in the whole video that I'm going to mention here. I don't know how they missed it on this one so bad, but there is a overdose of lavender in this fragrance that throws it so far out of balance that I would put it in like the 60% similar category, and I'm probably being generous with that. There are some similarities. There's a little fruitiness in this one. There's a little bit of something that might be like tobacco, maybe, but overall, this smells more like the original Azzaro Wanted than it smells like Wanted by Night. So I would say this is a miss, and this is one of the Paris Corner fragrances that came out a few years back that I think has put a little bit of a stain on the name of Paris Corner fragrances. And there are others that I would say the same about. I think they're really doing a good job of recovering their reputation. I have others I can mention. Their clone of Naxos is really good. Their Mancera line, I think they did a fabulous job with. So Paris Corner, I think, is a little behind the 8 ball because they've got some stinkers in their history, and so does Armaf, and I'm sure Lattafa does as well. I just don't know of any. But beware, if you're buying a Paris Corner fragrance, you want to do a little research and be sure you don't get one of the crappy clones like this one, because I would never recommend this as an alternative to Wanted by Night. Okay, we're going to move on now to our fourth house, which is Fragrance World. There's others we could put in this video. There's a ton of houses now that are making their way to the west, but these are probably the biggest players. I don't have Afnan, Rasasi, El Haramain, but these are ones that are producing a lot of fragrances. Next one we're going to talk about is, of course, Fragrance World. First one. This one is, I think, a absolutely gorgeous, fall fragrance. It works well in the spring, almost all year round, probably just not in the summer. I'm talking about Fahrenheit Les Parfums. This is a aromatic fragrance with a violet leather accord that's going to remind you a little bit of gasoline. That's Fahrenheit in general. And what they did with this one is they added, I think it's rum and vanilla. So they added booziness and vanilla to Dior Fahrenheit, and you get something that it's just really unique. It's not overly sweet. It's still very powerfully aromatic. It's got a little bit of that petrol vibe, but you add in that sort of sweet, sticky, boozy vanilla rum, and you get something absolutely gorgeous. Now, of course, Fragrance World has cloned Fahrenheit Le Parfum, and I don't know if you could tell by looking at the bottle what they were going for, but they've got Reinheit Parfum. And this one, of course, is the same fragrance, supposed to be the same fragrance, and it smells very, very similar. I would put it in like that 90 to 95% similar. I would have said 90 whenever I first opened it, but as it sat for the last 3 months, it's gotten closer and closer. This is an excellent clone of the fragrance I just showed you, and I think it's a good example of why Fragrance World is getting more attention, you could say, than the other clone houses right now. They are doing it right. Their pricing is not as competitive as something like Lattafa, but they are really doing something special. And usually what happens is after their fragrances have been out for a while, the price starts to fall and you can still get them in that mid-20s or sub-$30 price range, which is amazing. All right, next, we're going to talk about one of my newer pickups for sort of a, summer evening, spring, fall, kind of transitional weather fragrance. This is a flanker of Le Beau. This one that I'm going to show you is Le Beau Le Parfum, which is basically like Le Beau EDP, but it's got a little more of a woody, musky kind of a vibe. So there's a little more heft to it. I think the pineapple is actually a little bit stronger in this one as well. So this is a tropical fragrance with some weight. It's sort of an all year round tropical fragrance because of that. Pineapple, coconut, and woods, and tonka bean, a good hefty dose of tonka bean is what you're going to get with this one. Well, Fragrance World, I think, has cloned the Le Parfum, but I know that they have cloned the EDP, and that's what I have here. This one is Jean Gustave Homme Amaze. This is a clone of Le Beau EDP, and it is freaking awesome. It's basically coconut tonka bean forward with pineapple sort of supporting those notes, whereas the Parfum that I just showed you is more pineapple forward with coconut tonka bean supporting the pineapple and then that sort of woody, musky base. A very distinct musk in that one. And I don't love that musk that comes across in that one. This, however, the coconut and tonka bean is mesmerizing. And the quality of this one, this does not smell like a cheap fragrance. This smells like a JPG original, and this is a fantastic alternative to Le Beau. If you want the Parfum in particular, it doesn't have that woody, musky strength that the Parfum has, but it's a great example of how Fragrance World is doing it right. And so highly recommend this clone. So we could go on and on, probably, 7 out of 10 fragrances behind me are clones, so we could go on and on and on. But in this long video, let me just summarize by saying, I would say that Armaf still has that OG status, and usually when they release something, it's going to be a good representation of whatever they're cloning. Their pricing is still on the higher end of the spectrum, although you can get older fragrances for a good price. I would say that Lattafa, Maison Alhambra, they are doing an excellent job, although I find the quality sometimes of Lattafa, Maison Alhambra is not up to par with Fragrance World or Armaf. There are times, even in the JPG clone that I showed you, there's a noticeable quality difference there, and that's not always the case. Some of my favorite fragrances come from Maison Alhambra, but so I would say they're killing it in the price category. Sometimes, though, there's a noticeable quality difference. Paris Corner, I would say they're recovering their their reputation, but there are some scars on their record in history. Unfortunately, that means you got to do a little more research before you grab something from them. But overall, I would say they're doing a great job, and their Mancera clones and even their Xerjoff Naxos clone, those are some excellent fragrances that I definitely would recommend, as well as some others. I've even got some in the mail coming from them that I can't wait to try. So they're good, but just be careful about the older fragrances. And then finally, Fragrance World. I think that right now they are the leading Middle Eastern clone house. I'm not sponsored by them. I've never got a free fragrance from them. They don't pay me, etc., etc. It's just the truth that whenever I compare fragrances that I own the original of, and then I get in the Fragrance World clone, which I could have done several others that I have up here that I could have done side by side, they are usually the most likely to have a higher quality than some other clone brands. Usually the price is not insane unless you get gouged on eBay. You're usually, even the new ones are going to be less than $50. And the accuracy as well is usually going to be pretty impressive. So I would say any of these you're going to do well. Just be careful with some older Paris Corner fragrances. But if you just wanted to go with one house to focus on, I would recommend to you Fragrance World, because I think they're really doing a great job lately. This video is probably way longer than I intended, but I hope that you will enjoy it and give the video a like. And please subscribe if you haven't done that. We got videos coming out regular that I think you might like. I'm Justin. This is SILLAGE Scents. I'll see you in the next one.